I'm not going to take a lot of time up here. I'll just quickly shift to Alex. But a quick introduction. We've got some nice people from Unity here. Alex, Andy, we've got Alan from 500 Quarter. And where is Pierre? Oh, Pierre from Codemasters. Unfortunately, I'll be speaking as a bit as well, but he can't do much about that. So I'll just shut up for now and do lovely stuff.
Yeah. No, thank you, Steve. Well, guys, a pleasure to be out here. Andy was here last year for Pixie and I mentioned that there was a good scene, and we wanted to get out here again this year. So Stephen very kindly jumped on board and helped us kind of set up the event today. And of course, a big thank you to Microsoft as well for the space, just to get us all together. We encourage kind of Unity user groups as kind of little pockets, ecosystems, I guess, of developers that are experiencing using Unity to kind of, I guess, share ideas, experiences, give a bit back, and generate, I guess, a positive environment for developers to kind of, I guess, share experience. And we're happy to come down and just show you a bit of new stuff and talk very briefly, I guess, a bit about Unity 5 and I guess where we're heading really as a company and as a tool provider. So there's my email address, do take it down. I've popped a couple of business cards here, and I encourage you all to come and find me at some point in the evening, in the gaps afterwards, grab my card. So just as a very brief introduction, I would be the account executive responsible for the developers across Malta. I work alongside a guy called Andy Bramall. I guess he looks after the bigger players, and I look after a lot of the startups and independent developers. So as a key point of contact really at the company, I predominantly deal with licensing, but anything from advising on support services. If you're releasing a game and you want me to jab our marketing department ribs, get a tweet out for you guys, and that's something else as well. Getting beta access to certain things, which I'll move on to. I'm going to keep this quite short because Andy's got the real meat for you all. So just, a bit of a kind of just an update on, I guess, where we came from, where we are now, really. Unity, we set out to democratise game development. It was 3 humble and very talented individuals in Copenhagen, originally starting out trying to make a game. The game didn't fly, but what they did realise is that they made a very fantastic set of tools to potentially make games. So that's what we set out to do. I guess where we are now, we're moving into the 5th version of our engine. We're in beta right now. I think it's beta 15, 14? Yeah. Oh, lovely. Okay, good stuff. So yeah, that's moving along in the beta there. Before you ask, we don't have a release date. I'm sorry. I'd love to be able to say we're releasing release date. We're still not quite there yet, but we're all hard pressed in Copenhagen and Vilnius, the core development teams there working on fire. And moving forward, I think where we're kind of realigning our vision, we set out to definitely democratise game development, and that is still very, very prominently our mission statement and goal. But moving forward, we're going to be focusing more on developer success and ensuring that developers who choose Unity as a platform to make games have more opportunity to be successful with their games. So we're going to be moving into developing a lot of services. You may have caught a couple of the videos at Unite. I've got a couple of beta links just up here, so for 2 of the services initially. So we've got the cloud building service. I won't go into too much detail, but do take a photograph of that. I think Stephen's videoing it as well, so you should hopefully be able to pick it up in video.
I'll put the links online as well if you want to. You can pass me the links and I can put them online.
That would be really good. I think for us, the more the merrier, the developers that want to jump in and try out these new services. So Cloud Build is a cloud building service in a nutshell. Analytics is for kind of like analysing the data from the players of your games, essentially. So jump in, try it out. We've also got the Unity Ads services and the Everplay services as well. So if you want an introduction for Unity Ads or the Everplay toolset, let me know, grab my card, I can introduce you to some of the guys up in Finland there. And then, of course, moving forward, we're looking into UNet, which I know Stephen's very excited about, but that's a bit further off. So, I guess without further ado, thank you all for coming. Do grab me, because I would essentially be your account manager, but I'll pass on to Andy, who's got the real meat, as I said. He's got the stuff.
I said that. Okay, cool. Hi, everyone. Sweet. So, can you hear me at the back? Yep, I saw some nodding, so I didn't see anyone sleeping, so that's a good start already. So, I was here about 14 months ago at PixieCon, is that right? And then when I heard, oh, December, when it's freezing cold in England, do you want to go to Malta? Of course. Oh, and do Unity stuff as well. So I'm going to be talking for the next 40 minutes about a lot of new bits and pieces we're working on. Some of it you may have seen before, some of it you may have not seen before. Some of you are going to be like, aha, or kind of think about it. So it's a lot of different bits and pieces we're working on. Some stuff I've shown to someone, it made a grown man cry at one of the features I'll show you. So I expect lots of tears. Of joy, hopefully. Yeah, so whenever I start the talk, I like to find out a bit more about you guys. So put your hand up if you are a programmer. That's the, wow. Okay, that's the, one or two people, okay, cool. Put your hand if you're an artist. Okay, that's cool. You can put your hand up more than twice, I'm not like a strict teacher. Okay, that's cool. Put your hand up if you're an audio guy or girl. You do audio. You don't have a huge beard. Yeah, there's always one. And normally you have they have big beards, bald heads, and they're wearing a Metallica t-shirt.
Music hardware t-shirt.
But there's an old music hardware t-shirt is more hardcore than Metallica t-shirt. Okay, cool. Right, yeah, so normally they always have big beards. That's cool. So put your hand up if you work in QA. Technically, everyone here should be putting their hands up. So, haha. Put your hand up if you use Unity. Okay, this is going to make my job much easier. Put your hand up if you have no idea what Unity is, games, programming, you just kind of saw a big room of people and thought this might be quite cool. I hope you know. Do you want to introduce yourself? Or? No.
Hi. Yeah, real quick, because Alex forgot me. I'm Brett. I'm actually running all of Unity's research and development, and coincidentally, I happen to live in Malta. I've been hiding in Malta, and I fly out to Denmark every Monday and back on Fridays. So just coming to meet you all. I'll leave some cards behind as well. Maybe we can get together and do some stuff occasionally while I'm here. And also, when we're all done, if there's any time, I can do Q&A on anything in Unity, and let's go. Thank you. Sit down.
That anything works very dangerous.
Yeah. I'm famous for telling too much.
Oh boy, okay. Okay, cool, so I'm going to head along. So the way it's structured is 40 minutes showing you lots of its pieces, and a bit of a break for you to take it all in and be like, whoa, okay, or to like, wake up from being a wow cone or something. And then come back, 40 more minutes, bits and pieces, and then other talks from other people. Alan, Luqa? Yep.
Duca?
Yep. Cool. We'll be giving a talk as well as chat from Codemasters. I'm terrible with names. Pierre. Okay, cool. And someone else, maybe? Stefan as well, of course. Yep. Sweet. So, I'm going to have a look. So, my name's Andy. This is me cosplaying as Mario. I actually showed off this picture, and someone said I still program on that keyboard. So you can kind of guess my age by that. And I'm a Unity evangelist. So, my family instantly think I've joined a cult, and I'm like Tom Cruise. Which is fine, that's cool. So I work with Unity in Europe, Middle East and Africa, and basically I get all the new juicy bits and pieces that they're cooking up in a big cauldron in Copenhagen, and then kind of show it off to user groups, to people, students, anyone. Some guy at the gym, I actually went and got my laptop from the locker to show Mechanim at the gym on the running machine, so like have it set up there. Yeah, so any opportunity I can to show off what's in Unity, talk about where we're going, all the new cool stuff. If you have any games or projects or simulations or anything with Unity, I've seen some really weird stuff, please send it to me because I like to see it and play it and buy it and stuff. So don't release an app for about $1,000 on the App Store because now I've got to buy it. Yeah. Cool. Oh, there, you'll then get $1,000. Right, so I'm going to be talking about a billion things. I have a tendency to overshoot my talk, so I'll try and wrap it up pretty swift. So the first set is going to be a lot of visual bits and pieces, including a tool called Debugger, which had a man have a tear just roll down his face, a tear of joy. Then it's going to be a bit about the UI system, 2D physics, a bit about the audio, WebGL, and kind of a bit of examples of what people are doing with all this tech. So I'm going to show you all the bits and pieces in the editor. I don't like PowerPoint at all, so I'm going to do as much as I can in the editor. And then show you some stuff that people are actually doing with it. Does that sound okay? Yeah. Okay, and then there's the Ask Me Anything bit at the end. Yeah. Okay, cool. Right, sweet. So, physical-based shading. So what we like to do at Unity is we like to hear what people are doing with Unity, what they like about it. That's really cool to hear that we're on the right track. Also what they don't like, or sort of common problems or common things that we could improve, like out of the box. And there's kind of like several things that are sort of very similar, and that's kind of the visual representation of games, and kind of get a new UI system. I was going to do a talk on the UI system called For UIs Only, 007 Years in the Making, but I don't know if you guys remember that joke. Yeah, so I chose not to do that title. Yeah, it hasn't taken 7 years. So the first set is going to be about lots of bits and pieces. So a lot about the shading, a lot about the lighting, about reflections, about enlighten and things like that, kind of representing assets in Unity. I'm going to use beta builds in Unity. So if anything funky happens, feel free to take a photo and send it to our social media people, and then wake them up. So, yeah.
Never blame me.
Of course, yeah, anything. Yeah, they like that bit. My favorite bug is where all the text in the editor completely disappears, but you can still make your game. I really like that feature because I like to think it's a hardcore mode. So let's say, for example, if I selected this, all of that, you could still tick stuff, but just no text. You have no idea what you're ticking. So yeah, you can. You know, I think you can see all the textures. Yeah, you select that, and that's all completely gone. So I don't think the devs liked it when I suggested we should have this as hardcore mode. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Well, the day before it ships, I'll go into the trunk and change it, and then yeah. Cool. So the first is physical-based shading. So one thing we want to do is out the box supply kind of a set of shaders and a set of tools that artists can then bring their content in and basically make it look really nice and represent it. And the switch side of this is kind of customizing as well. So you've got that, you want to make things look very nice, very beautiful out the box, and texture it in a very nice way, in a nice simple interface, but you also want it to be customizable as well, because Unity has been used for just about lots of very wild things. So I saw a VR archery system with an Oculus Rift plugged into a laptop in your rucksack, in a room which was tracking your position, and you had a bow and arrow detector when you pulled back and released, as a game, like all powered by Unity. And there's all sorts of different things. So, for example, in this scene, which is a Viking village that our demo team was working on in Stockholm, everything here is using the same sort of standard shader. So, for example, the mud here, like the water puddles, the wood there, the metal here, like the hay. I think the SkyParks doesn't use it, but someone in our community will probably alter it to be SkyParks compatible somehow. So our community like doing naughty things. Cool. So what we have here is we have a doll. Put your hand up if you've seen this doll before. Yeah, okay. My girlfriend likes to joke I see this doll more than I see her, so you can judge our relationship by that. So we've got this doll, and this doll's built up of lots of different segments, but each area of the doll, so let's say the cloth along the back here, like this metal clock here, and sort of like the glowing bit in the middle. Her waistcoat, her like creepy face and stuff. Basically, all the parts of this doll is using the same shader, but just tweaked in very different ways to basically represent it as cloth or rock. My favorite bit is actually not even the doll, the actual base of it. So if you see it, you can see like a nice sort of like reflection across the bottom of the base. And that's the same shader you used for the rock as well. So it's kind of like an out-of-the-box, nice shader. So rather than playing with the doll, which my girlfriend doesn't like me doing, I'm going to use this cat instead. So yeah, we have a nice cat. Cool. So yeah, people say that we should, the cat's a balloon on the doll, people say we should actually get this proper balloon. So after we give a talk showing off the cat, everyone leaves the building with balloon cats, and then just an old lady's like, why are there 70 balloon cats? Like, one of those weird things. So we've got this cat. So to select the cat, what we have here is we have the shader. So this has gone through various name changes. Currently it's the standard shader. It was the Uber shader, universal shader, now the standard shader. And there's whole threads about what it should be called. Yeah, currently it's standard. And the way the standard shader is being built up is to make the UI as sort of simple and as straightforward as possible. Can you guys look back to see that? Because I know it's kind of tinted a bit red. We haven't gone crazy and made the whole Unity editor. So
it's fine.
Okay, that's fine. So we've got all sorts of different slots for different things that you want to have in your shader or have onto your object. So currently my cat just has a texture map to basically say, this is where its eyes are, this is where its teeth are, this is where like the ends of its paws have this particular color. It's very straightforward. Now the next thing that we have is a smoothness slider. Now we have two variations of this shader. So we've both got like a smoothness, glossiness version of it, and we also have a metallic roughiness version of it, depending on how you author your content. So in this build of Unity, I have just the standard, the smoothness, glossiness. And this is kind of to define how smooth an object is, from not smooth at all to completely smooth as possible. So if you notice on this cat, if I have a look at the cat, let's have a look on here, and I change this slider, as I get all the way smoothed up, it's got like a nice, really sort of like reflective polish, reflective shine on it. I can then sort of tint that. So let's say I want it to be, I don't know, with green. I can even set it to white. So this is a good example of like you can see actually going through the different steps. So no smoothness. So let's say you want, I don't know, carpet. Carpet's not that smooth, right? It depends on the carpet. Yeah. So if I then go through these different steps, you'll notice it's getting more and more smooth. So that's for more like, I don't know, like a car maybe, clearly not washed. And then go through, I guess that would be good for a vase. And then as we get through to the end, so the last bit, ta-da, we've now got a sort of like reflectiveness. So this is currently using the skybox to reflect the cat. I'll show you how you can sort of interject reflections into the scene in a bit. So we've got this slider. Very simple, right? You couldn't get more simple than a slider. However, what you may want to do is basically highlight particular areas to be smooth. So let's say, if I go back to this image, we've got here like this shield. So you want the middle bit to be reflective and shiny of all the things around it, but you don't want kind of the wood to be shiny because it's not really right. Now you don't want to make a separate material for every single section of the shield because that's terrible. That's a really bad idea, especially if you want to go onto mobile devices. So what we can do is instead, we can actually pass in like a texture map, which basically highlights particular areas of this. So what we've got here is a texture map. You can pass that into the specular slot, and it kind of overrides the smoothness slider, and basically says these particular areas are smooth, and these particular areas are not, based on the alpha. So if I hover over, yeah, so it still uses the RGB to color different areas, and then it uses alpha for smoothness. So if I go pop, and pop that in here, we've then got a nice cat, kind of like more reflective. So you'll notice that the eye isn't as reflective, whereas the body more is. So yeah, you can basically specify certain areas. Groovy. So we have a normal map as well. If I pass that in, so that's nothing new. But what we can do with the normal map is we can change how much it affects the, I guess the mesh or the model and how it's represented. So currently it's at 0 sort of power. If I set it to 1, you can see that this normal map is basically indenting it a bit more like a balloon. And then you can keep scaling it, so you can actually keep going. Now the cat looks like he's either eaten a lemon or he's extremely hungover. I used to live in London. I saw so many people who look like this on a Sunday morning. Yeah, clutching coffee. So you can go the other way. So I imagine someone eventually is going to make a game where you eat lemons or something like that, like Lemon Run or Temple Run. And then as you eat lemons, it goes, yeah, that was horrible. Cool. So yeah, let's say that's we won, because I feel really sorry for her. I did that once to some girl, like, was really upset. She was 10 though, so yeah. Cool. So what else do we have? So we have occlusion. So say like we don't want to rely on the lighting to darken certain areas. We want to pass in a texture such as this one to darken like where the ear is, or the mouth, or kind of, I guess those are the teeth or something like that. We can then pass that in as well. So we're kind of building this up by plugging in all the different textures. So we've now got sort of darken the area pieces here, and that's not relying on the light, that's relying based on the texture. We can also choose that slider. We have support for other things, so you can pass in a height map if you need to. Emission as well, so you could have like coals glowing in certain areas, or like maybe I could have the cat's eyes glowing blue or red or something evil. I don't know. Or his eyes are bloodshot. And yeah, you can basically pass in all these different bits and pieces, so you've got this nice, beautiful cat. Groovy. Everyone is still with me? Yep. Sweet. You guys are very quiet. Oh, I haven't made a potato joke yet. I've been told about potato. I love potatoes. Is that right? Yeah? Potatoes are in my blood? Yes. Hopefully that guy's here. Is he here? He's too busy making potatoes. Yeah. So I got that joke, yeah. Sure. I don't know any Maltese, but I know potato guys. Yeah. That's okay. You can do all sorts of other stuff with this shader. So currently this shader is in opaque mode. You could use this for cutouts. So if you had, say, foliage, or you had, I think in this Viking village we've also got like kind of like a cloth cutout here. You could, for example, use something with a cutout. We also have support for transparency as well, so you can basically sculpt this in different ways. Yeah. So let's go down. So actually, one of my favorite bits to play around with is the secondary map slot. So we can not only pass in different textures and materials and sort of like details into the main maps, we can also pass in things into the secondary maps and kind of like highlight different bits and pieces. So let's say I wanted this shirt to have this particular ridiculous pattern, but then I wanted to have like a chainmail texture or individual thread texture. Rather than passing in that thread texture into kind of like the detail, I can basically overlap it with a different one. So let me get rid of some bits and pieces. So I've got my cat. My cat is looking very, very attractive. And let's go down to my list of materials. So I've got all sorts of materials here. Pick one. Not 3D pattern 59. That's experimental. I know someone's going to pick that, so I'm going to delete it. Cracked. Okay, right. Someone said rock. Okay, cool. So we have here a nice rock texture, looking very beautiful, and we have a normal map as well. So I can say to my cat, let's turn down that seclusion as well. Pass in rock. So we've got this sort of like rock pattern around the cat. Is rock shiny or smooth? Let's try it anyway. Okay. So we've now got kind of like, I guess, polished, shiny rock. That doesn't make sense. I can then also pass in a normal map. So let's say, and then tone that. Wow, okay. That's probably a bit too extreme. Let's put that down. And put that down to like 2. So you now got kind of like rocky cat. I can then take the cat and make him brown, and he's like chocolate, like cookie dough cat or something. Oh, that's demonic. That's demonic. Demonic lava cat. I could then pass in a mission map and then have like his eyes have holes. Oh, this sounds good.
Andy, that's a really crappy looking cat.
Yeah. Okay. Let's. Let's not use that color. Is that looking better? Yeah. Okay, so let's do something different. Let's do Play-Doh. So I've got both here a Play-Doh texture. This isn't my fingerprints, in case anyone's going to take a photo and it's still my identity. And we've got a normal map as well. So you don't have to pass in that texture, you can just pass in a normal map or to basically make it feel. So let's go here, pass in that. Let's increase the tiling. Let's let it be 1. And then I can basically look around here. Ah, that's really bright. But I can view it here, and you can actually see as I sort of tone up the normal map. Like tool, and then sort of pull it up and stuff. That's very cool. Let's put that down. Yeah, so I've basically got that guy's fingerprints. Someone said we should release Play-Doh sets of this cat. So everyone's just making Play-Doh through everyone else's talks at a conference. This is a nice idea. I don't think marketing liked it though. Okay, cool. So let's do, I'll do one more. Let's do wood. So we've got the cat. Let's pass in this wood texture. Pop. So we've now got kind of like this etched wood all around the cat. Is wood shiny? No. Unless if it's been varnished. So we've now got like varnished cat all around. And then let's also pass the normal map in because we want the little bumps along the wood texture. So you can actually see along here, like as I sort of tone up the normal map, like you can see it kind of like cutting in. So it's like and then. So yeah, I've got kind of like lacquered cat. Yeah. I feel very sorry for that. You can then combine all sorts of bits and pieces. So we could get felt. We could, yeah. You can play around with this a lot. I spend a lot of time playing around with it. You can kind of sculpt it in lots of different ways if you like. So the next thing I'm going to show you. So that's one thing. How much longer do I have until the break?
15 minutes, 20.
Holy smokes. Okay. The next thing that I'm going to show you is kind of like the scene render settings. So you've got this shader, you can apply it to lots of different pieces, but it's also the lighting in the scene and the ambient lighting to tie everything together. So we've got here a nice big skybox, a nice bright sun over there. We've got kind of like some dark areas over there. We have all sorts of other different sort of environments. So if I turn the cat into a balloon quickly, that one pop, that one pop, and then get rid of the wood. So you've now got like super nice reflected cat. what you'll notice is that as we go put in different skyboxes and different materials, it's basically changing kind of like the scene's ambient lighting. I've got a demo later on where it basically changes the scene from day to night, so it goes day to dusk to night, and you can actually see all the different objects basically changing through. So yeah, I basically got, you can jump in and out. So we've got this edit scene render settings panel, which has always been there, but it's basically been extended. So once we pass in the skybox, we can actually set what type of kind of ambient color that we put to the scene. So currently you can do like a color into your scene, which is kind of like lame. Whereas, or we could use kind of like the default ambience of the skybox. So if you have your skybox, all the different elements are basically going to use that kind of similar color. We also have reflections. So currently we're using a custom reflection, so you can pass in your own Q map, so everything in your scene uses the same reflection map. I'll show you how to basically interject at certain points, or you can use a skybox. So, and you can change these on runtime pretty quick. So I've got this, so you can see as it's changing through. And I've got a demo on my iPad mini, which is like the first iPad mini of me changing through very, very quickly, and it's jumping in and out. So you can basically swap through the skyboxes and have the doll take a cat for a walk or something like that. Cool. Ruby. So, what am I talking about next? I've got 10 other things. Reflection probes. Okay, so now we've got our different bits and pieces in. We've got smoothness, we've got things like that. I'm now going to show you how to sort of interject reflections at points. Because not everything is going to use a skybox. You may not have a scene which uses a skybox at all. You may have an indoor scene. So you want to set up a reflection probe at a point, which other things would use. So we've tried to sort of make this as straightforward as possible. So I've got here a nice Viking house, which our demo team are working on. They're working on these kind of like houses to be modular. So you can see here I can do all sorts of crazy stuff, like move that there, take this, move that here, maybe like scale that up massive. You know, basically modular sort of house sets. So, and you can see here that basically the Vienna, that's the skybox of like Austria. I showed this in Vienna, some guy said, I know that hill, which was really weird. And I said, do you live in a house like that? And he goes, very similar. And he showed me a photo afterwards, and it looked not that far from it. It didn't have weapons. But he said he has like hunting bow and arrows, and yeah, I was a bit weirded out, but yeah, cool. I guess that's how it goes in Austria. So we have here the house, and what we want to do is we want to basically interject in a reflection at the anvil. So we've got this very nice anvil, posing very beautifully for us here, and basically reflect the house in the anvil. So we made this kind of, this workflow as kind of straightforward and as customizable as possible. What you need to do is go to game objects. We finally filtered stuff into categories. Yeah, I remember when I first started with Unity many years ago, and I was one of those guys in the front saying, why is it not in categories? And and we have here reflection probe. So I'm just going to create a reflection probe. So there we have it in our scene. Very simple. So I showed this once, and someone said, great, now everyone's just going to have huge Minecraft cubes in our game. And that's not the case. These work as basically bounding boxes. So automatically, any mesh renderer that's inside kind of one of these sort of zones, and they use reflection probes, will basically use this probe. So what you can do is, if I want every single person in this room to be super smooth and reflective, and everyone to kind of reflect stuff, I could then place a probe in this room and basically drag out kind of the bounding box around that environment. So we've got this bounding box here, and I can basically edit the bounds and basically trim down, you know, how this bounding box is going to fit. So you can place one in kind of like several rooms. So say you had a dungeon, you could put like a probe in each room of your dungeon. The probes also can blend. So if you have blend probes, basically you could then overlap the probes. So if you had a room that's like of red stuff, and then, okay, red stuff is a bad example. Red lighting, right? And you had a room of kind of like blue lighting, rather than your character walking or something moving through the rooms, it just instantly goes whoosh and switches. You can kind of like overlap them a little bit, and they'll basically blend as you go through red to blue, which is pretty cool. Or you can basically turn it off if you want. You don't want everything to be shiny. Right, so reflection probe. So we've got the reflection probe here. Now, because the reflection probe is an object in your game world, you can basically attach it to different surfaces. So I can attach it now onto my anvil and then basically move it around. So if my anvil is here, it will basically rebake the reflection probe in the corner, and then, yeah, basically it will treat it accordingly. So I can put reflection probes either like in a room to be used for the whole room, or kind of like on separate individual surfaces. Sweet. Right, now that we've got the reflection probe, what should we do? Let's actually see it. Let's actually make our anvil reflective, because currently it's not being a very good model. Cool, right. Okay, so. Right, so we have this here. So what I can do is I can tone up the smoothness of my model, and let's make it completely white reflective, like so. Let's turn off the normal map. That is one very impressive anvil, I'll be honest. The blacksmith has not used it in any way whatsoever, so yeah, that's quite impressive. So what you can notice is that in our scene, it's actually reflecting the anvil is actually reflecting the house in it. Whereas if I turned off the reflection probe, you notice that it's automatically not doing it. It's because it's within that bounding box and zone. Now, if we wanted just this probe to use the anvil to use this probe, we can actually drag and drop it in and basically say explicitly use this individual probe. So you could do something like that. And let's have a look at the probe. So the probe has several settings. You can view it in a little preview window, so you can actually see what the probe is actually reflecting at this point, and you can control lots of bits and pieces about it. So baked basically bakes it in the editor, and it will be if a room you don't want it to change. So let's say we bake this room, and then if everyone leaves the room, everyone will still be in that bake. So this is quite useful for lots of things on the floor. Let's say a glass on the corner, you're not really going to notice someone's fully reflected face in it with baking it. So this is quite cheap on sort of own devices. Custom is if we wanted to interject in like a cube map. So let's say someone wants to, I saw one game and they basically took all of their reflections and then basically darkened all the shadows in certain areas. So their game, you can still see, you know, the floor and stuff, the shadows weren't that dark, but the reflections were for some reason. You can then do that and basically pass in the cube map. Real time will basically be if you wanted to kind of update real time. You kick that off by a script. So I'm going to set it to 8. Sweet. So you also have resolution. So if you want it to be, you know, Fez style, you can drop it down to 16, and we have a very nice, yeah.
That was horrible.
We can also bake up to 2K maps, but I've never done this in front of more than 5 people and it not crashed the editor. So I'm not going to do it. I was at a conference at 200. I was at a conference of 200 people, and some guy from was like, "YOLO, just do it." And I was like, "No. I'll stick to something that's fine."
Come on, let's see crash.
No. Okay, cool. Our VP of engineering would be happy to crash that.
I'll fix it.
Anything. The next one's reflection passes. So this is kind of a funny story. When I first got it, I was playing with reflection probes. So the first thing I did is try to make something out of Labyrinth with David Bowie, where you had like a reflective mirror maze. So I put like a reflection probe here, and then like 2 super smooth cubes, and it was like bounce, and then crashed the editor. This was like a while ago. And then I basically filed that bug report, and basically it was kept passing reflections, like saying, it was almost like Chuckle Brothers, like to you, to me, then forever and ever. So now kind of reflection pass is set at 0, so hopefully if we have new users, they don't place in a probe, everything is reflecting everything and it goes a bit nuts. So currently we have reflection passes, so we can pass in, for example, 1 reflection pass, which will basically bounce off an object and reflect it, and you can basically scale up, but I think anything further than 3 or 4, unless you're making a mirror maze, is a bit overkill. So let's leave it at 2. You can set up other bits and pieces. You can set up intensity, so maybe I don't want my anvil being this shiny and reflective. It looks like the blacksmiths have not done his job. I can then tone down the intensity with that reflection, so it's not as hardcore. And what else can we do? We can toggle on box projection. So this basically takes the Q map, and you can see that when it's turned on to box projection, it's basically reflecting things kind of in a box shape. So this room would be kind of tricky. If we're in a box room, that would be pretty great, because then we can reflect everything like a box. If we turned it off, it's more spherical, so it's more round objects. So let's say this glass would be better for spherical, whereas this iPhone 4 running iOS 7, sorry Microsoft, would be like box, and that would be a bit better. Sweet. Right, so reflections. So reflections, PBR stuff. I've got 10 minutes, is that right?
Yeah, almost. We'll find a natural point.
Okay, cool. Let's talk about something else. Right, so lighting. I've had lots of information about Unity's lighting, saying, oh, this lighting system needs to be better, needs to be improved. So it has been. So let me find a mine temple. Here we go. Everyone close their eyes. Everyone close their eyes on my desktop. Okay, so we have a nice, beautiful scene here of a mine temple. Ruby. So, I remember when we first showed off the new shader stuff and the new reflection probe stuff, like in the feature trailer and the cool music in the background. And so I said, I'm really worried that you'd kind of restrict your new lighting disorder system just to your new standard shader. What if we want to use it for, I don't know, current shaders in the system? So every sort of object here is using the diffuse shader, the one that's currently that's in Unity currently. So we've got here a Mayan temple. This isn't sort of one piece. I can pick stuff up and then like move rocks around and stuff, and basically do all sorts of bits and pieces. And basically, what we can do is we can play around with the lighting and sort of see and control different elements of the lighting in the scene and how they bounce around. So the tricky thing with this is, let's say I've got a light, which is here, a dynamic light, a directional light which is pointing in a particular way. And we've got all sorts of different options we can choose. So currently the light is baking in real time, so the light is going to change, it's doing it in real time, it's not really baking the content. Baked is like if you were to do static light maps, like you currently do in Beast. Mixed is kind of somewhere in between, they're kind of tweaking with that. So on lights, we can also control sort of something like bounce intensity. So someone give me a colour, not yellow or white. Pink. Everyone always goes with pink. I was in Sweden and I said, someone give me a colour. It was a different topic. And some guy at the back, like, he was a biker and he had huge muscly tattoos with a mohawk. He was like, pink. And I was like, okay. Don't hurt me. So I like to imagine that this guy's going to be like at the back of one of my talks and he's going to be like, you chose pink, this is good. I'm gonna head off to wherever he gives a talk next. And then see him up, he does the next thing. People really like pink. So what we can do is we can actually sort of change up the bounce intensity of that pink and how it sort of bounces in all the different environment. Now that's kind of tricky to see. So what our sort of lighting team did is they brought in lots of different sort of views which you can control and kind of look at. So we can basically go and you can see what the textures are like without sort of any elements of lighting on it and kind of how they're generalized. We can view all the emissive materials. So if you have the standard shader with coals, with like red coals, like lines, or lava or something like that, something emissive, you can basically isolate those individual objects and view them. You can also view the irradiance. So here is our horrible pink. Who chose pink? Oh yeah. Most of the time people don't put their hands up, so yeah. Okay, cool. So what you can notice is that as I increase sort of the bounce intensity, you can see how that is bouncing. If I rotate it, you can actually see like how, as I rotate it, how that bounce is basically playing off. And if I turn that off completely, you can see that it's using the skybox to basically light up the scene. So we've got this nice blue kind of Wind Waker style cel-shaded skybox with a light up there, or sun. You can see how it's basically affecting your environment. So you can see down here we've got kind of like a darker area here, we've got some lighter areas, and we can see how it's kind of like stacked on top without needing, yeah. Let's turn on lighting, because that's beautiful, yes. So come back to the yellow. Groovy. So if we go back to texture, you can basically see how it's sort of built up. And we've got all sorts of other different bits and pieces. You can see how all the static baked lighting is. So you can kind of see what's baked and what's kind of like not baked and kind of compare them. And in our documentation, we should have, no. Yeah, in our documentation we do have, for example, like different comparisons of those different lighting views. Let's go back here, let's change this back to texture. So we have here a very simple script, which basically changed the skybox from day to kind of dusk to night. I am aware I just completely ruined what this is about to do. So let's turn down that, and let's see it do it. So we've currently got here kind of daylight, and it's got a nice yellow light. And then as it kind of goes to red, you can see kind of the environment changing to darker. And then as it goes to black, it basically changes, and then the red emissive materials turn on. Now the really cool thing is I can actually pause it in this sort of the editor, and I can actually fly around and basically sort of see how it's changing. So this is quite useful if I want to see, say like I want to see what, okay, you can't see it at all. Stephen, could you turn off the lights quickly if that's okay?
Sure.
Sorry to be a pain. Okay, so say like we wanted to see this light on the left here and how it influences the sort of geometry there. We can basically view it in irradiance, so you can actually see like, so we've got here kind of like the red light, and you can basically kind of see how it's influencing there. So you can see how it's all bouncing off the different terrains. So you see it's not really sort of going around the back of that teeth, it's there. Cool. We can also view its... Cool. We've got it there. You can also view it, so let's say we wanted to view it as time is going round, so you can see it's now going to kind of like red light and then the irradiance, and then it's eventually going to pop in sort of like the emissive materials. You can see how it's viewing it there, and you can also view kind of something like just the emissive sort of objects there. So you can play around with all sorts of bits and pieces, basically emit all the light. Right, and I've got 4 minutes left, is that right? Or less, minus 1 minute?
You can naturally finish off the session.
I've got one more thing to show, and then I will sort of have a little break. So we've kind of got the standard shader. We have no more shader. Microsoft detected it was a Mac. Hey, okay, actually, that looks, yeah, cool. So I know I've sort of gone over this kind of like as a very high level, drag and drop, put in bits and pieces. And at the end, I'll sort of direct you to where you can sort of go more in depth in these specific areas. But you've kind of like got the standard shader, then the sort of reflection probes tying into that, then sort of the lighting bouncing around tying into that. So one problem that some developers have is kind of visualizing all the draw calls in the editor. So kind of seeing this. I remember when I started off with Unity, and I look at the stats panel, and I'll be like, what is that 39 draw calls? Is it mostly post-processing effects? Is it mostly easy GUI, not batching? Is it mostly me using the built-in UI system, the old one? Is it, why are there none being batched here? Because surely I've kept, I've kept it within the dynamic batching, I'm showing materials, why is that? And that kind of annoyed me for a bit. So thankfully our developers made a tool to help you with that. So what you can do is you go to Window, Frame Debugger, and we have a nice, sexy, it's not that sexy, I'll be honest, a nice big list of all the different things that are being drawn, and kind of like in the different categories. So you can notice here that we've got, for example, depth texture, so we can see the drawing, we can see image effects are at 10, and then we've got that here. We also have a slider to basically go through all the different steps. So you can actually go through and see all the different things that are being rendered. This is for everything you need to, so if you have any UI elements, if you have any, I don't know, processing effects, so you can see here that vignetting is 7 draw calls, whereas noise and irradiance is 1 draw call. It doesn't tell you exactly how to optimize your game. We're not at the level yet where it gives you like a magic list, click this, 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 and then it'll run on an iPhone 4 or something, or it'll run on any Windows device. Yeah, we're not quite at that level yet. But it's very helpful. So say like you have a house, and you put the house in, and then suddenly you shoot up by 1,000 draw calls, and then you look at it and like every single blade of grass or every single rock is using a separate material, you can probably go to your artist, give them red ball, and tell them to stay over the weekend. Another thing you can do is select individual parts. So you can see here that as I kind of go through, as it's drawing all the different elements, you can see that it's basically drawing the mask, basically popping through, and if we will just close this quickly. Give me a bit, I don't like the word screen real estate, but yeah. So you can actually see it kind of cycling through all the different, so it's drawing, so you can see it's drawing the back hood, and then the face, and then the clock. So maybe, I mean you can't really see the clock being drawn on that call, so yeah. If I select that clock, I can then view in all sorts of bits and pieces about that clock. So you can notice the mesh. You can also see how many vertices and indices it's using. So if you're doing something like dynamic batching, you can see if it's like maybe 1 vert over, or and then get really angry. You can also see what the event is, so whether it's drawing a mesh, drawing UI, drawing whatever you want. You can also see the shader it's using, so it's using the standard Uber universal shader. And basically, the different sort of defines for it. And yeah, so yeah, the frame debugger. This is the thing, I showed it in Finland, and this guy who was super quiet the whole meeting, like didn't say a word, and then at the back he was like, this is beautiful. And then like a tear came down his face. And then I instantly put that on my CV, made a grown man cry. If you actually run it in the editor, so we can see it going around here, and then you're like me, and you're like, oh, why does it jump up? Why did it go down? What you can actually do is you can actually pause at certain points. So say like you're making a game with, you have to kill goblins, and then you walk around the corner, a boss goblin drops down, and then like it shoots up by like, I don't know, 5,000 draw calls for some crazy reason. You can then actually open up the frame debugger on that particular frame. So frame debugger here, and then I can actually scrub through that. You can see it's actually drawing all the UI elements there. So the spheres, it's doing those one by one. We can actually go through all the elements on that particular frame. So if it shoots up by 5,000, you can see that every single thread on the orcs like chainmail is a separate material. You can then go fire your artist or give them red ball, give them potatoes. I don't know, whatever. Cool. So I think that's it. I'm 1 minute over. Yeah. So after this, so I've kind of gone through sort of a high-level overview of lots of sort of visual bits and pieces in Unity 5. I'll then sort of give you a list at the end. After you come back, I'll talk about some other bits and pieces, sort of show off a bit of the new UI system, show off the new 2D physics bits and pieces, a bit of the new audio, so audio mixing stuff, talk a bit about WebGL, get into work for examples, and yeah, hopefully that will be okay. I don't know how long the break is though. So
15 minutes?
15 minutes?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So, yeah. Groovy. Okay, is everyone still okay? I don't know what yes is in
Eva.
Eva. Eva?
Yeah.
How do you say how are you? If Keith Int. Keith Int? Okay, cool. So I'll know a bit of Maltese now. Potato? Okay, cool. I'll stop the potato now. So there's that guy probably here or outside waiting for me now. Okay. So I'm going to go through sort of the next section. It's going to be about 35 minutes, 40 minutes. Then we can go and have Alan talk about all sorts of cool stuff. Codemasters talk about cool stuff. And things like that. And I'm going to talk about sort of other sort of different areas. So new UI system, I'll sort of show you a bit of an overview of it. New 2D physics, which are a lot of fun to play around with. I'll show you a bit of new audio mixer, sort of how it's set up. Talk a bit about WebGL, and then I'll show you sort of different examples of where you can go and sort of learn more bits and pieces. Because if I was to basically sit down with every single one of the things and talk about them in a full set, we'd be here for probably about 3 weeks, and my girlfriend's birthday is on Thursday and I'll get in trouble. So yeah, so let's kick on. So new UI, so put your hand up if you use NGUI. Okay. Put your hand up if you use the built-in old UI system. Okay. Put your hand up if you use the new UI system. Aha, we have some volunteers then if I lose my voice. Okay, I'll Stefan put his hand up as well.
No. I'm busy.
So with the NGUI side and all the products aside, we kind of had before, I guess, kind of 3 UI systems. So there was 3 elements of doing sort of UI out of the box. So there was kind of like the GUI game objects. You create a game object, you could see it in the game view, and it was kind of like GUI texture, GUI text, and things like that. Which was great because I worked in some teams where like the artist was like, oh, I've done a helper, I can just chuck it in and then send it to the programmer. The programmer's sitting there and he's like, wait, how do I then? He basically had to script and sort of control everything about it. So I mean, it was fun for the artists because they could just drag and drop it in, it's great. But then it wasn't visually scene view to position it, handle if it, and scale to different screens and things like that. So yeah, kind of that way. Then had the other way where on GUI, so programs could write everything about it, but then the artist wouldn't see it until it kind of played in the editor. So you kind of had these 2 difficulties. We both had a UI system that programmers want to extend and customize and control different elements of the game. And you kind of had one which needed to be more like kind of visual and scene view. So we basically worked on the UI system for a bit of a while to get it right and get it perfect, get it optimized for mobile, and kind of get it extensible for whatever people want to do with Unity. Like I was saying, people will use Unity in lots of very odd, crazy different ways. I never thought I'd see a dolphin classroom simulator where you wear an Oculus Rift and you have an exam paper and the questions are really difficult and you have to cheat by peering over someone else's desk. But everyone's a dolphin, so if you get caught, they shriek at you. And it's a very weird game, but for example, you had to create a UI system that wasn't just for a racing game or a shoot 'em up, because that would be very, very quick to do. You kind of had to make it as extensible, customizable for all different types of dolphin-related situations. and things like that. Is there a scale electric track?
It might be the AC, I think.
Okay, that's fine. So what we have here is the cool thing about this is you can download this and play around with it right now. So I've got a very, very simple scene. So I've got a scene, I've got sort of several UI elements. So I've got a simple little robot in the corner, he's kind of chilling out, not really doing much. And I have a control panel down here. So the way that the UI system works is a canvas-based system. So you have a canvas and you draw different UI elements into that canvas. You can then, depending on what the purpose of the canvas is, control it in different ways. So say like you wanted a canvas for a, who's played Half-Life 2 or 1? I said this to a bunch of like, they must be 16, 17-year-olds. No one knew what Half-Life was. And I almost just closed my laptop into that. I'm like, are you doing game design? I then asked what Team Fortress, if anyone played Team Fortress 2, like one guy put, yeah, one guy put his hand out. I was like, well, that one guy is, you can have a beer afterwards. So for example, if you wanted to have a health bar or a weapon panel like you would in Half-Life 2, you can position your canvas in that manner. If you wanted it to have some depth or have like a 3D object, or let's say Battlefield, where you have kind of everything having a perspective and it's attached to the camera, you can then control the canvas in that way. If you wanted it to be an object in your game world, such as on this panel, you can then control it like so. So you have a canvas for different situations. If I wanted Alex to stand up and challenge everyone here to Hearthstone, I could get a canvas, put a speech bubble in saying, I will own you at Hearthstone or whatever. Yeah, he is terrifying at Hearthstone. He gets really sick. He's a nice guy until you play him at Hearthstone. For example, I would take the canvas, put all the different elements, and then sort of attach that onto his character above his head. So basically, you can use this canvas system in whatever way you want. So I've got two canvases here. I've got one in the corner, which is being rendered in the screen space, and then I've got one attached onto an object. So this is the really cool thing about this canvas system, is when it's rendered in the screen space, you get this nice big massive canvas, like that's the room down there. That's how big it is. So I can basically take this canvas and then basically edit it, kind of like how you would, assume to edit bits and pieces. Like, so you've got your canvas, and then all the elements being drawn on it. So in this case, I've got a background image. I've got, which I can then, I'm not going to tell you how to scale something. Come on, you've all used Microsoft Paint. You've got text. You basically got all the elements that are tied to that canvas. So I've got here a robot camera. So what's robot camera in Maltese?
Robot camera. Maltese accent, yeah.
Camera. Okay, what potato? What's potato?
Patata. Patata.
P-A-T-A-T-A.
P-O.
P-A. A for apple.
Yeah.
That's how I would say. That's
Like that? Patata camera. So with the text, you can do other things such as rich text. So I can actually type in sort of in here, color equals red. Close it on the other side. I can then also do oh, it's already bold. But anyway, so I've now got potato camera. I should really swap that for a potato, or the guy from the video. So, for example, with the text and kind of the images, you can basically position them and control them. You can see them in the scene view. So as I move around, let's say the background panel, you can see it actually moving around in the game view. So it's very kind of visual for artists to bring in, scale things, position them. I want the health bar to be here. I want the text to say potato or whatever, or health bar or whatever it is, and things like that. Now, the really cool thing about this system is kind of the way that it solves scaling to different screen sizes. So let's say I want that to be sitting in the corner. What we have here is every UI element has this. Okay, so our developers call it the anchor system. Our community call it something else. They call it the power flower. Pick which one you want. Anchor system is the official one. So we have here the power flower.
Can we do a petition to change it?
Pardon?
Can we do a petition to change it?
You can try. Well, yeah, you can ask Brett. Anything?
A couple of beers might work.
Yeah. So the reason why they call it the power flower is, I'll show you in a second. So we have here the game view, and let's say we want to anchor this panel to, let's say, the say like the middle of the screen at the top here. So what I can then do is I can actually grab this power flower and then sort of position it around. And basically the UI is offsetting from that power flower. So if I want it to be in the bottom left-hand corner, I can then position it to the bottom left-hand corner. And then as the screen adapts, it will always be anchored from that point. And every single UI element has this same power flower. So if I have a panel and then some text, I can then anchor the text as a child onto the panel. So if that panel adapts to the screen sizes, the text will always sit in that corner with that panel. And this is both works in the world space and the screen space UI. Now this is why it's called the power flower. If I want it to basically adapt, rather than sit in the corner of the screen and then adapt to the screen size of the screen, I can pull off the petals of this power flower and basically specify a range that it adapts by. So now I have, this is going to look so bad. I now have this UI adapting towards this power flower that's basically pulled out. So what you notice is in the game view, it's basically adapting. So you can see here, you could have on this phone, a button that's like 80% of the screen size, which is a nice big size. And then as it goes up to the bigger screens, it adapts accordingly. Now, the problem comes here with if you had a 4K, like 4 screen. So who uses flight simulators and plays them? No. Oh, one dude. Okay, cool. So he's going to totally relate to this. So the problem is if you build a game for a device this big, and you've got an 80% wide button, that's great on this device. If you have a button going across 4 screens, that's completely ridiculous. Or even, to a whole screen. So what you can also do is you can actually add a component of a content size fitter, and then basically specify, the horizontal fit, like the preferred size. So it will keep scaling until it gets to 300 pixels, 400 pixels, whatever it may be. So it keeps it, you can basically scale it, adapt it, and kind of have it trim and things like that. Okay, so I've got a robot. The other cool thing with this UI system is that I've got here it uses the same spriting system as the 2D stuff. So pretty handy if you use the 2D stuff in Unity or you've used it. Okay, cool. Right, okay. So it uses kind of the similar system because it didn't really make sense to make a 2D system and a UI system, and they both use sort of 2 different types of importing assets. So for example, if you I think the first thing I did with this new UI system is make Flappy Bird all entirely in the UI. And Flappy Bird was on an invisible slider going up and down, like to flat and stuff like that, and the screen was one big button, and stuff like that. And I actually just about managed to make Flappy Bird with mostly no code, and I'll sort of show you how in a second. I had to do some collision code, but yeah, and I built it to my device, put it in front of people, and they thought I'd use the sprite system, not the entire UI system to make the whole game. Whether I should have done that or not, I'm not sure. I think I would recommend it to make it all in the UI system. So we've got here this texture, and what we can also do is we can also pass in pure textures as well as sprites. So here we've got a render texture of this robot's head. That's coming from like a camera over here, so we've got this like robot being rendered over here, and then basically that's then going into the canvas. So you can basically render things at certain points, like CCTV or stuff like that. Right, so let's go look at world space. So what we have here is we have a canvas currently being rendered in screen space. Now if I change this canvas from screen space, I can then change it to either camera space. So basically it will render in front of a camera, and then you could have all sorts of kind of perspective depth to it. So you could have like panels that are kind of tilted out or something like that. Currently it renders them orthographically. World space physically just takes what I have and it makes it disappear. So for do we have any swag? For a hub, can anyone tell me where it went? Yeah, it's absolutely massive. So if I take this, there's my robot. And he animates as well. So it's a bit creepy. So what that's doing is basically taking the canvas that was originally a huge big canvas, and it's kind of like one Unity unit to 1 pixel. It's a huge big canvas. And it's now turned it into a world space object. So I could take this, and I could basically take the canvas and, let's say, scale it down to a small nice size. Yeah, so I can have it watching over me. So what you can do is you can basically take your UI, you can either design it in screen space, then turn it into a world space and attach it onto a crate or a panel or something like that, or you can leave it in screen space. And the really cool thing about this is once I switch it back to screen space overlay, it instantly pops back because this canvas, it remembers all the anchor points and how to control it. Now I have here a little control panel, which is looking really cool. And I've got a canvas that's just attached to that as a child. So what you'll notice here is I've got a canvas, and this canvas has like that there. So I could extend it, I could basically control it. I basically can use everything I use to edit or move around anchor points in the screen space in the world space on like a panel. So let's say, looking around the lighting over there, we could have a panel on the lighting over there. You walk up to it, you interact with it, and you change it. So let's see what else we have. So we have here a simple little robot arm panel. We have a toggle, slider, an input box, and at the box of the new UI system, we basically got support for typical visual things like images and text and masking and stuff. And we also have kind of the base bits and pieces you need for a UI system. So buttons, you click them, they fire off an event somewhere. An input field, you type in text, it then passes the string somewhere. Scroll bars, if you want to scroll things. Kind of out-of-the-box controls. You can also script and sort of extend and create your own custom controls if you need something a bit more in-depth or a bit more customized. But these are kind of most use cases. If our UI developers were to make every single UI out-of-the-box component for every single type of UI, it'll be shipped in 30 years' time, I guess. So, yeah. So basically, they made a whole API so you can customize it how you want. Cool. So we've got here toggles, sliders, and text. So one thing you can see is that as I sort of hover over sort of different elements, so let's say the slider, I can basically manually change the slider, change the toggle. I could actually go into the text and I could type in something like hello Malta. And then we've got that changing back to the panel, hello Malta. I should have had a speech bubble out the dude's head saying, I love potatoes, hello Malta. Has that got old yet? So with each of these input controls, what they do is, as the values change, it then passes that event. So we've got toggle here. So what I want to do is, I've got a nice big kind of robot arm just spinning around, just casually, chilling, just going around. I want that toggle to basically turn on and off spinning. Something really, really simple that you want a UI panel to do. So I can basically take that toggle, add in an event for that toggle, and I can basically pass in the robot arm. So if I go to the robot arm, open up the body. So I've got here a script that's basically got spinning. Boom. I can then basically go to the robot arm. I can drag and drop the robot arm into that event slot and pop it in there. And then I have access to all the components that are on that robot arm. So as we're using a toggle, we're passing in a boolean of either true or false. So I can then go to the game object and I could just hook that up to turn it on and off if I want to. So actually, let's try that. Let's also queue up a second event. Let's go to the robot arm and call the robot arm. So rather than a dynamic event, I can do a static event. So let's just say, let's change the robot step. Is that right?
Yep. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Let's
It's actually weird that you can
also yeah, so you can basically queue up all sorts of events. So what you'll notice is that as I go into the editor, so yeah, it's toggling through. We now have Stefan Caruana, the robot arm. Cool. So we can basically queue up all sorts of different events. You can have like a volume slider that basically changes not only the volume, but like how the volume effect is affected and things like that. Now I don't want it to turn on and off my robot arm, that's completely pointless. So let's go down to the rotator script and let's toggle spinning. So we now have something that's like this. That looks super boring. But it's basically going in and turning on and off this particular valve. So I now have a slider here, so let's hook up the slider to the robot arm and spin it up. This is where stuff gets a bit weird. So what you'll notice here is the toggle is passing a boolean of true or false. Slider passes a single, so it either passes a float or an integer. So if you wanted a music slider, you could have a volume between 0 and 100. You can just set up the minimum and maximum value. So I was going to say we turn up the slider to 11. No one's seen Spinal Tap? Yeah, it was just a terrible trade, wasn't it? Yes. So someone give me a different number. Not 1 or 11.
42.
Yes, it's normally 42. 100. Yeah. Actually, let's take that away. We can also send it whole numbers, but in this case, we're going to send it just a float. Let's add in. Let's go to our robot arm and pass that in. Go down to the rotator script, change rotate speed. Let's do something else. So I also have a flaming barrel here with lots of particles bouncing out. So I can actually take this slider value, go to the particle system in the barrel, and then increase the emission rate. So rather than emitting 0 particles, emit 42 particles as I change the slider. So let's go to falling. Yep, that looks pretty sweet. Let's go to the slider. Let's pass in. Ooh, falling. Let's go to the. Okay, you see the particle system. We've got sort of quite a few things we could hook into. Let's hook into the emission rate. So we're not only changing the speed of the arm, the emission rate of the particles, we could change the lighting, the intensity of the lighting. We could change the volume of something. So now we've got this. So does this still work? Yep. Current's at 0. Let's. So yeah, that's who chose 42.
I do.
That's such a boring number. I'm sorry. Let's do 4,200. So you can actually see like the parts of the there go, and then when they're at 0, no particles. I could hook this into the speed of the robot and have him spinning up like he's trying to pose a red ball. Yeah. So another thing you may want to do is, let's say we turn off the spin speed. We could then pass in the slider or another object and then basically turn off the whole game object. So now if toggle was turned off, so there's no jump, there's no spin, basically it's going to drop out the whole slider like that. So yeah, you can hook things all into different bits and pieces. So there's one more thing I'm going to show you in this UI system, and that's how you kind of tween, sort of like a button. So we've got here the canvas, and we've got here a nice big button called button. So Maltese language, don't fail me. What's Maltese for button? Like that? Did I get that wrong? BU. It's good enough, right? So now that we have this button, we want to control how, when your user hovers a cursor over it, or basically what happens. And we have all sorts of different transitions. We have no transition, the most boring transition of all time. Nothing happens. Color tint, so we can tint the sprite by a whole color. So if you like iOS 7, I've set up a pink and a blue. We can change the fade duration to 2 seconds, for example. And then now when I hover my mouse over it, it's going to take 2 seconds to fade into pink and push it down. So that just takes the base sprite and then tints it to whatever color. We could do something really boring like sprite swap and swap out the whole image, kind of like a flickbook. Or a flipbook, or we can do animation. So for another hug, you can guess what happens when I click this button. Magic. I'll put that on the feature request. No, so what this does is, if you didn't feel that color tinting or sprite swapping was enough power for you, or kind of control, you can then click this auto-generate button. So what's the Maltese for button? Oh, it's Butuna. Is that right?
Yeah.
Cool. Create that. So now this button has an animator on it, and we can now use the state machine or mechanism to basically control the button. So now we can animate the button doing 3D stuff, spinning out. I haven't tried it, but this will be interesting. Maybe you could put mocap data on it or something. I don't know. So you can basically control it in different ways. So let's say I select button, unhighlighted. I can then animate it to basically, when it's here, I don't know, make it, I'll do that. So you hover over it, and then when it gets here, that'll be good enough. So you can actually see like it's actually animating around. And let's say when it's here, let's take the text, and then make the text large, and then position in 3D out. So now it's going to be like, and we hover over it. Yeah, that looks seriously dead space. So we now have a button that does that. So when I hover over it, it does about half of it, yeah. Cool, but you can basically use Mechanism to basically plug in and customize different things. You could have a sprite sheet, or you could have, I don't know, you're just changing color, growing in size, rotating, doing cool stuff. Right, and the last thing I've got here is the button, going to our robots, going into the animator, and having this massive list of all the different things it can send a one-shot to do. So I'm basically saying, go to the robot and have him cheer because he's eating my potato. Yeah. And this, I did this accidentally once. So because we have this UI system all in the engine and positioned there, you can basically place, say, particle systems on the UI, or let's say a collider on the UI. You can basically actually put components that already exist in Unity on the UI system. So you could do an audio source on the UI, or you could do, let's think of something crazy, a trail renderer, a light. You can do all sorts of really cool bits and pieces on the UI system. And because I did this accidentally once, I'm going to go to this whole control panel, add physics to it, and collider. No, we've already got a collider. Sorry. Add a rigid body to it. So now you can see it actually moves around, and the canvas basically follows along with it. So you can actually have UI that's bouncing around, attached to objects, doing really cool stuff. Does that look like fun? Is everyone going to go away and rinse their bandwidth and download it? Sweet. Cool. Yeah. And you've got all sorts of other things. You have controller support. If I built this for mobile and I had the slider, it would just basically use my finger as like the pointer data to pass it in. You could do all sorts of really cool bits and pieces, but I'm running dangerously low on time, so let's move along. So next thing I have here is a physics. So who makes 2D games? Okay. So all the new visual bits and pieces are very tricky to kind of like, you're probably looking at the 3D stuff going, oh, how does this kind of relate to me? And it's quite tricky to build in, I guess, 2D visual stuff, because a lot of it's dependent on kind of how you sort of create your artwork and things like that. Although someone did dare me to make Flappy Bird in the new lighting and stuff, and I didn't have time, but I put Flappy Bird in and just positioned that with the sprite. So that's the standard shader on the sprite. And I didn't even realize that it was reflecting in the anvil by default, because I had a reflection probe on there. And I put that on Twitter, and someone said that's not AAA enough, so I added loads of bloom and vignette to it. He said, good enough. So yeah. So with the 2D stuff, we basically sort of built in lots of kind of like physics effect areas. So a common problem is basically having a bunch of objects and then basically pushing them all in one direction, say a wind, or like if you're doing a racing game like a big skid track. So what we have here is we have 4 big blocks, and in each of the blocks you have an area effector which pushes an object with a rigid body in this particular direction. So with no sort of scripting, you could basically say, have this coin, when it enters each of the blocks, it should explode. Yeah, I'm happy it did that. Basically, as it goes into each area, it's pushing it with a particular magnitude in a way. So you could have a racing game where you drop like an ink splat and then everyone skids out in a particular direction. Or you could have, let's say, Mega Man style like paths that push you in different directions, like conveyor belts. You could have wind, so when you drop something, like in the wind, it pushes along. You can actually variate this as well, so force variation by 30. So that's both 30 above and below magnitude, or kind of different way. So you'll notice that some of the coins will basically have different types of magnitude. So some are going to be faster and affect it more, and then some are not. Some are going to be really slow. So yeah, cool. So you can basically position these around. And this uses the collider, so you can sculpt in like a crescent moon and push it around. So this is kind of a continuous in one direction. So let's look at something a bit more different. So what we have here is we have a gravity area. So rather than pushing in a direction, either attracts or repulses from the middle location. So what we have here is we have a whole bunch of asteroids flying in, and they'll all be pulled in to the particular points. So you'll notice as they come in, they're all being attracted to the centers of the points. Those little bits are, I think, particles, so they're not affected by it, but you can see, yeah, they're basically scooting around. So you can either attract it to a point, and you can change the magnitude. So someone give me a different number than -10. Not -1, that's boring. -3,000. So now, as they're pulled in with this top right one, yeah, basically be super smashed. So you could have some orbital gravity game, or do something really groovy. you can also send it away. So I can actually do plus 3,000. So rather than attracting the magnitude to the point, I can actually send it away. So if you look at the top right one, so this one, goodbye. So you could do like force fields or bubbles or bounce pads, I don't know, something really cool like that.
Are these in Unity 5 or?
Yes. As well as having kind of continuous forces, you can also almost do, you can change them on runtime. So I've got a little magnet. On the magnet, I have like a little area here. And then basically I've just got a simple thing that allows them to attract the coins to this point. And then I can change it and send it away. Although that's not too powerful. Our demo team should really sort of crank it up a bit. So minus 2,000. And then basically push them away. So yeah, you can basically, as you move it around, it will automatically push it away. Loads of them are shot back up. So you can basically change that on runtime, and just because everyone seems to make a Flappy Bird thing, here we have Flappy Bird, and we kind of have the bombs one-shot in. So last time I was playing around with this, I had the bombs attract the birds. They're kind of like, I just watched Interstellar. Has anyone here seen Interstellar?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I'm not going to ruin it. So I've got here, for example, I can apply a force of 200. So as the bombs blow up, they can basically do stuff like this. So what this does is it means that you can use this area effector and basically emit kind of like a one-shot force as opposed to a continuous force. Or you can create something interstellar-like and do minus 400 is probably better. And rather than sort of pushing them away, kind of attracting them. So you could have a game where what's that going to do? Okay, that'll probably be enough. Yeah, look at poor Flatboy. He's so upset. You can download it and just defeat him. So yeah, so those are sort of all out of the box bits and pieces 2D physics stuff. I'm sure that people will combine them in different ways. So have, let's say, a continuous force that emits almost like shock waves from a particular point continuously. It'll do sorts of really cool things. How much time do I have, Stefan?
5 to 10 minutes.
Okay, brilliant. So, I'll wrap up very soon. I'm sure you're all very fed up with me ranting and raving. I probably don't have time for audio, but I'll direct you to where you can see lots about it. We've got lots of content online. I'll talk about WebGL. So, in terms of WebGL, this is something that we've been working on for kind of a bit of a while. And it's not, I guess what we're going to do is still have kind of the web player allowed, but we'll kind of have both the web player and WebGL kind of at the beginning. And WebGL is going to be called Preview to begin with because some things aren't necessarily supported out of the box. So you can still make a full game. It's nothing crazy like no, audio doesn't work at all. You can still make a game. There's a couple of things that aren't necessarily supported that are on our blog that you can look at. So I think controller support through USB. Maybe that's what. Yeah, there's a couple of bits and pieces. It's tricky because they fixed a couple of them recently. So yeah, so there's a couple of things. But you can still make and release a stable kind of full game.
Are you just talking about in browser or are you talking standalone as well?
In browser WebGL. Yeah. So just to cheat because I don't have enough time, and to kind of bring in the British thing, here's one I made earlier. Or here's one that our demo team or Madfinger made earlier. So what we have here is we have Dead Trigger, which is a very popular zombie shooter. No. So which level do you want? Left or right? Right. Sorry, I prefer the right one. So what we have here is we have Standard Games. They basically took their iOS title Dead Trigger and sort of moved it over. They've even left in like the touchscreen buttons, which is pretty cool. I've got axes, I've got J.J. Abrams lens flares. Everyone's seen the Star Wars trailer, right? Oh yeah. Oh, I've got zombies, of course. I can drop chickens. I could drop more chickens. I wasn't at GDC. But apparently, like when people were on our booth showing off this demo, people were coming up and saying, yeah, it's pretty cool. And then people were coming up, some of our developers were coming up and going, here's a chicken. And they're like, oh my god, this is great. I have guns. The thing is now, the trouble is the chickens are too dominant. They actually just play the whole game for you. You got to a stage where games are just being played for you. So we have the, I don't think you can put them. I don't want to do, what are you trying to do? And they run around. Oh, great. So we have here the, basically the WebGL game. It's embedded in the canvas. And we have, for example, a call to make it basically full screen. So I could say to my grandma, hey, do you want to play a sweet game, grandma? I'll send it to her and she can play this if she has a WebGL in the browser. Also, they had, I had to die on purpose. And again, yes, I'm sure. So you could basically also open up different browser windows. So say like you wanted your game saying, click here to go to our dev blog for the game or things like that. So basically with the WebGL stuff, yeah, it works very nice. What you can also do is we have this demo up in the Angry Bots demo, that famous Angry Bots, which is just for everyone's seen. And basically you can go through the source code so you can see kind of like, you know, what Unity kind of regurgitates out when it basically, you click the build WebGL button. Cool. So I'm sure I've got 1 minute left, right? Is that right, Stephen? Holy smokes. Okay, so we've got all these new bits and pieces still in development, they're still being worked on, and they're still kind of being made better. And that's currently where they are. So we've got lots of other bits and pieces in the pipeline, but that's kind of like an overview of a lot of the sort of key bits and things. So we kind of gave them to some people to kind of, not as guinea pigs, but to see kind of what they did with it. So create small examples and demos. Because I find, to me, that's kind of when the Unity features are kind of like more sort of fleshed out, more grown, when they're given in the hands of developers. Because we're only, what, 500 people or so? And that's 500 people's kind of vision. It's when it's given to all sorts of developers, one guy in his bedroom doing crazy stuff with sprite renderer, 2 big teams. That's when it gets really interesting. And some of the results have been very interesting. So I was in Annecy in France for an animation festival, and some French guy comes up to me and is like, this is a model in Unity 5. And I was like, what? And I was like, that's a pretty cool screenshot. It looks nice, I don't believe you. And he's like, no, rotate. I'm like, holy crap, this is actually rotating and spinning around and stuff. And basically they had it and they scanned a person and put it into Unity 5, and then they made their own custom skin shader and stuff. And they did like a video guide on how they actually scan the human and put it in and things like that. So that was quite cool. And kind of weird that a French guy comes up and shoves Unity 5 over my nose in the middle of Annecy. This chair looks very nice. This corridor looks very nice. This building, which is actually a stolen asset from Grand Theft Auto, we haven't asked him how he got that. And this robot. And basically this is a guy who comes from kind of a background of like V-Ray or Rhinoceros and things like that. And he basically got the Unity 5 beta, and he wrote a, this is the blog post he wrote. We do get to the fun eventually. And that's just about like the lighting and the rendering. So he basically did it, he experimented with it, he did all sorts of demos, video guides, things like that. And he did point out, this was done a little while back, and he did point out at the top, this is in beta, so this is kind of where it's currently at. But he was able to give lots of feedback, lots of, this is what this button does, lots of kind of guides and how he does things. He also did nice videos. So this is all real-time kind of lighting and things bouncing off. It zooms in the chair. My favorite bit is actually the camera pans round to a corridor. Oh yeah. And then basically the corridor goes through and all the lighting's looking really nice. Eventually, when it gets to it, then you go, oh yeah. And then he basically does lots of comparisons, like this is what I try to achieve, like a real life photo, and then how he sort of got there. He did lots of, said nice things, but he also said kind of some things that our developers saw. And I remember our developers said, could you send us kind of more of a comprehensive like list or guide? And I haven't seen the document, but I heard it was much bigger. Yeah, and he mapped Patrick Stewart's face onto a dummy and put him in this because it's like cerebro. I don't know. A couple of people have met him, but he was basically doing some really nice, beautiful bits and pieces. And that's just one guy. without a tutorial about it. So yeah, ramblings definitely. I read about half of it and then kind of had to do other things. So yeah, basically that's from one guy. He's done lots of really cool bits and pieces, and I'm sure our lighting team have lots to read. Rust. So you guys know the game Rust? So it's made by the guy Gary Newman, who makes Gary's Mod. And basically they are making Rust in Unity 5, well in Unity 4, and then they tried to port it over, and they said the first port took them 2 hours to move this big game over, and if you actually now go play Rust online, that's actually running in Unity 5. And they actually did a pretty cool blog post, kind of comparing before and after. So here you've got the middle of the day, and you've kind of got a dark area. They're kind of showing before, it's kind of harsh lighting, and then kind of it's a bit nicer. There's a pretty cool warthog. Here's a video of a naked guy. People in Scandinavia love this video. So kind of they showed like the day going panning around from day to night. Our marketing asked us, what are people doing in Unity 5? And I sent them this video. I sent them all the other stuff, but I just wanted to send them this, and they were like, oh, okay. So yeah, they kind of did some comparisons of before and after, and kind of talk about it quite a bit. And I think they did recently they did a blog post basically talking about their workflow, what new things they're using. And yeah, you can go play Rust right now, which is really cool. It's running Unity 5, which is nice. So that's Rust. I have one more game to talk about, which some of you may know. Do you guys know Gang Beasts? Yes. Thank God for that. So Gang Beasts, obviously, all the characters don't have baked animation. It's all based on physics. So when you punch in the game, the force then moves your character to tumble, which allows you to wrestle with other jelly baby men. And they originally, in Unity 4, kind of had a limit of about 8 players, 10 players. They're targeting Xbox One and desktops and things. So Xbox One, 8 players is the most controllers you can have, whereas on desktop they wanted to go bigger, maybe have a 20 versus 20. Maybe this side of the room and this side of the room can have Xbox controllers, and then just play them just this big armies of Play-Doh men charged towards each other on a bouncy castle, or something like that. So they basically had it in Unity 4, the characters have lots of bone joints in them, and the physics was the one thing that was kind of slowing them down a bit. So they kind of capped it about 8. So what they did is they posted up this vine of 40, oh no, they didn't tell me to know. No, it's not running on 64. Don't worry, I've got a video somewhere. So they posted this vine of 40 characters all running around, and that's running, it drops down to 51 frames per second is the lowest thing. So that's 40 AI just punching each other. And we said, could you do kind of like a video stress test, like a before and after? So this is Unity 4 physics. So 40 doing, and it drops down to 5 frames a second, so that's a pretty good PowerPoint presentation. Look at that. 3 frames, oh wow, okay. So that's Unity 4, and then they took exactly the same scene, put it in Unity 5 with no real changes at all. And this is what it looks like. And that is a solid. And they said, by our calculations, we could probably have 100 versus 100. And we want to see that so bad. So they're going to do a talk, and then at the end, so they're going to do a talk, and at the end, they're going to say, everyone go under their seat, and there'll be an Xbox controller, who either red or blue. Let's have a big war type thing. So that's basically because we updated the physics from 2.8, I think, to 3.3. And I showed this to a bunch of guys from NVIDIA who were in business suits, and they were all giggling like schoolgirls, and they loved it. They wanted to talk to them more than anything. And these are 3 guys who all live together in Sheffield. And they've challenged us to a match, like Unity, so Unity versus the guys who make the game. And yeah, so they're working more and more on it. And that's pretty much the end of my presentation. So we've got 5.0 release, all new rendering stuff, new audio stuff, new 2D physics stuff, WebGL stuff, new UI system, but that's going to be in 4.6 as well, which is available now. It's just been released. You draw a debugger to make every grown man cry. OS8 Metal support, which, yeah, 64-bit editor, PhysX update, speed tree integrations, you can have beautiful trees. Mechanim as well, which I didn't talk about, but you can basically write scripts and attach them directly onto states, rather than having, you know, a update saying, am I in jump mode, am I in jump mode, am I in jump mode. You can actually do on-state entry to a particular state and stuff. New cloud services, which Alex talked about, and we quote thousands of other improvements, so I'll put that quote up there. Yeah. and eventually you'll see that list of the thousands of other improvements. And if you said, okay, that's cool, but you kind of skimmed over some things, you can go to our channel, and we have a big conference every year called Unite, and we have a main keynote and then lots of individual talks. And I'll never forget being online and kind of like seeing all the footage from it. And then we uploaded the keynote, which is 2 hours long, and our community was saying, it's just a 2-hour video for a whole conference. Can we have more stuff? Can we have more? There were 62 talks about Unity. So then we put up all the videos, equaling 48 hours, and the same people were complaining we have too much content now. So either not enough or too much. So we're going to stick with too much. You don't have to watch all of them, although some of you probably will fall in the night and do that. So if you wanted to, for example, duck into the WebGL stuff, you can basically see the guys working on WebGL talk way more specifically about it. Rather than high level, you're kind of more low level. Physics demos, lots of bits and pieces like that. More specific towards UI, kind of more hour talks and Q&A. You can also see the roadmap and wishlist talk, which Brett's actually in. Yeah, so you can go see all the different things that are on the roadmap or people are suggesting. And we also invited some developers, like the guy Joachim who makes Shader Forge, to come and talk about Shader Forge. And this talk is really cool. Talk about the community, networking, and just about everything. There's trees, a whole 26-minute talk about trees. Yeah, Connect, stuff like that. So a whole 1 hour talk about Connect. So yeah, lots of different content you can go into and read and watch and enjoy. And that's pretty much the end of my presentation. I'll be hanging around, of course. I have contact details, so just take a photo of that or just come find me afterwards. If you answer the question correctly, I'll give you a hug. I don't have any swag, unfortunately. I'm really sorry. And that's pretty much the end. I'd like to thank Stefan. Yep, there he is. I was just going to look for you for putting this whole thing on and sort of inviting us back. Hopefully we didn't make too many potato jokes.
Thank you for coming, actually.
It's made me quite hungry now, though. Cool. And thanks for everyone for giving up the evening and coming and sitting in the dark room and watching a cat and laughing and stuff. So yeah, thank you. Cheers.